Those words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. 23 years with Meridian Industries. 23 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and building strategies that saved this company millions. Gone in one sentence. My name is Marcus Holloway. I was the Senior Director of Strategic Planning at Meridian Industries until 30 seconds ago. Now I'm apparently a security risk. Richard Caldwell, our CEO, didn't even look up from his mahogany desk. His fingers drummed against the polished wood, the same desk where we'd celebrated our biggest wins together, the same desk where I'd presented the market analysis he was now choosing to ignore. Richard, what's this about? The quarterly projections? We can discuss. There's nothing to discuss. His voice cut through the air like broken glass. Your services are no longer required. The security guard appeared in the doorway. Young guy, probably making minimum wage. He looked more uncomfortable than I felt. I'd seen this coming for weeks. The closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to, the strategic documents I was suddenly excluded from, the way conversations stopped when I entered the boardroom. But knowing something is coming doesn't make the impact any softer. I need to know why. My voice stayed steady. 23 years of corporate politics had taught me to control my emotions. I deserve that much. Richard finally looked up. His eyes were cold, calculating. This wasn't the man who'd promoted me 5 years ago. This wasn't the man who'd called me his right hand. You've become a liability, Marcus. Your resistance to our new direction is undermining company morale. New direction. That's what he called it. I called it corporate suicide. 3 months ago, I'd presented a comprehensive market analysis. The data was crystal clear. The economic indicators were flashing red. Consumer confidence was plummeting. Supply chains were fracturing. Every metric screamed the same message: prepare for impact. Richard had dismissed it all, called me a pessimist, said I was stuck in old thinking. The board backed him, they always did. Richard had a gift for making terrible ideas sound brilliant. Charisma over competence, style over substance. Sir, we need to go. The security guard's voice was gentle, but firm. I stood up slowly. My legs felt like concrete pillars, heavy, unwieldy. You're making a mistake, Richard. The market is fine, Marcus. Your paranoia isn't. I walked toward the door. Each step felt like walking through quicksand. In the hallway, employees pretended not to stare. Some looked sympathetic, others looked relieved they weren't in my shoes. The elevator ride to my office took forever. 47 seconds that felt like 47 hours. My office, 23 years of my life, packed into a corner space with a view of the parking garage. Awards lined the walls, photos from company retreats, a coffee mug my daughter made in 3rd grade. She was in college now, studying economics, following in my footsteps. What would I tell her? I opened my desk drawer. Inside was a flash drive containing my complete market analysis. 6 months of research, hundreds of hours of data compilation, projections that showed exactly what was coming. The security guard watched me pack. He was trying to be respectful, giving me space while making sure I didn't take anything proprietary. How long have you worked here? I asked him. 3 months, sir. 3 months. He'd barely learned where the bathrooms were. Good company to work for, I said. Usually. He nodded but didn't respond. Smart kid. I packed my personal items into a cardboard box. The weight of it surprised me. 23 years reduced to 15 pounds of memories and knickknacks. The walk to the parking garage felt like a funeral procession. Employees lined the hallways. Some shook my hand. Others just nodded. A few brave souls whispered encouragement. This is wrong, Marcus. You didn't deserve this. Good luck. Their words felt hollow, well-meaning, but powerless. In corporate America, sympathy doesn't pay the mortgage. I loaded the box into my Honda Civic. Same car I'd driven for 8 years. Reliable, practical, everything Richard wasn't. The drive home was a blur of traffic lights and radio commercials. The afternoon news was discussing market volatility, unemployment numbers, rising inflation, everything I'd predicted in my analysis, everything Richard had ignored. My house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, suburban perfection with a mortgage that required my Meridian salary. The lawn needed mowing, the gutters needed cleaning, normal problems that suddenly felt insurmountable. My wife Jennifer was in the kitchen when I walked in. She took one look at my face and knew, they fired you. They fired me. She wrapped her arms around me. Her embrace felt like the first genuine human contact I'd had all day. We stood there in our kitchen holding each other while my career died around us. "What are we going to do?" she whispered. "I don't know." For the first time in 23 years, I genuinely didn't know. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the flash drive, about the data Richard had dismissed, about the storm clouds gathering on the economic horizon. I pulled out my laptop and opened the files. The numbers stared back at me like old friends. Unemployment trends, consumer spending patterns, corporate debt ratios, housing market indicators. Every single metric pointed toward the same conclusion. Economic collapse was coming. Not in years, in months, maybe weeks. I'd tried to warn them. I'd presented the data with surgical precision. I'd shown them exactly what was coming and exactly how to prepare. They'd fired me instead. The irony was almost poetic. Almost. I spent the next morning updating my resume. 23 years of experience condensed into 2 pages. Strategic planning, market analysis, crisis management, skills that should have made me valuable. Skills that had made me unemployable. By noon, I'd submitted applications to 12 companies. By evening, I'd received 3 automated rejections. The job market was brutal. Companies were cutting costs, not hiring senior executives, especially senior executives with reputations for being difficult. Word travels fast in corporate circles. Richard had poisoned the well before I'd even cleaned out my desk. Background calls were going unanswered. Networking contacts were suddenly unavailable. I was radioactive. 2 weeks passed. No interviews, no callbacks, no hope. The news was getting worse. Market volatility was increasing. Major retailers were announcing layoffs. Banks were tightening lending standards. Everything was unfolding exactly as my analysis had predicted. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt sick. Jennifer was putting on a brave face, but I could see the worry in her eyes. We had 6 months of savings, maybe 8 if we cut everything to the bone. After that, we'd lose the house. I was checking job boards when my phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus Holloway? Speaking. "This is David Martinez from Martinez Consulting. I heard about your situation at Meridian." David Martinez. I knew the name. Small firm. Boutique operations specializing in crisis management. Solid reputation, but tiny compared to Meridian. "I'm interested in your market analysis," he continued. "The one that got you fired." My heart rate spiked. "How do you know about that?" "Word gets around, especially when someone presents data that accurate and gets punished for it." We met at a coffee shop downtown. David was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. "I've been tracking the same indicators you have," he said. "Your analysis is spot on. The crash is coming." "Then why isn't anyone listening?" "Because people hear what they want to hear. Your former CEO wanted optimism. You gave him reality." David slid a folder across the table. "I have a proposition." Inside were contracts with 3 mid-sized companies, all of them requesting comprehensive market analysis and crisis preparation strategies. "They're willing to pay top dollar for accurate forecasting," David said, "especially from someone with your track record." "My track record got me fired. Your track record is about to make you rich." The contracts were generous, more generous than my Meridian salary, but they were also risky. If I was wrong about the market collapse, these companies would lose millions following my advice. If I was right, they'd be the only ones prepared when everything fell apart. "I need time to think." "You have 24 hours. After that, I'm moving on to other candidates." I drove home with David's folder burning a hole in my passenger seat. The contracts represented everything I'd lost at Meridian. Respect, authority, financial security. They also represented everything that had gotten me fired: inconvenient truths, unpopular opinions, data over politics. Jennifer read through the contracts while I paced our living room. "These numbers are incredible," she said. "But what if you're wrong?" "I'm not wrong. But what if you are?" That was the question that kept me awake all night. What if 23 years of experience had made me paranoid? What if Richard was right and I was stuck in outdated thinking? What if I was about to destroy 3 companies with my pessimism? The morning news answered my question. Meridian Industries had just announced a major expansion: new facilities, increased production, massive capital investment. Richard was doubling down on optimism. I called David Martinez at exactly 9 a.m. "I'm in." The next 3 months were a whirlwind. I worked with David's team to implement crisis protocols at our client companies. We reduced inventory levels, diversified supply chains, built cash reserves, prepared for economic turbulence. Our clients thought we were paranoid, but they paid us anyway. Insurance, they called it. Expensive insurance against an unlikely disaster. I threw myself into the work with an intensity that surprised everyone, including myself. 12-hour days, weekend strategy sessions, constant monitoring of economic indicators. The data kept getting worse. Consumer confidence was plummeting. Corporate earnings were missing projections. International markets were showing strain. The storm was coming. I could feel it in every spreadsheet, every trend line, every economic indicator. I just didn't know when it would hit. The answer came on a Tuesday morning in October. I was reviewing overnight market data when the numbers started flashing red. Major sell-offs in Asia, European markets in free fall, futures pointing toward disaster. The crash had begun. I called David immediately. "Turn on the financial news," I said. "Jesus Christ," he whispered after a few minutes. "You called it perfectly. The next 72 hours were chaos. Markets collapsed worldwide. Major corporations announced massive layoffs. Banks stopped lending. Consumer spending evaporated overnight." It was everything my analysis had predicted, everything Richard had dismissed as paranoid pessimism. Our client companies weathered the storm beautifully. Their reduced inventory levels meant lower losses. Their cash reserves provided stability. Their diversified supply chains prevented total disruption. They looked like geniuses. We looked like prophets. David's phone rang constantly. Companies desperate for crisis management expertise, executives who'd ignored the warning signs, scrambling for solutions. "We're booked solid for the next 2 years," David told me. "Every CEO in the country wants the guy who predicted the crash." The guy who predicted the crash. That's what they were calling me now. Not the paranoid pessimist who got fired for being difficult. Not the outdated thinker stuck in old models. The guy who saw it coming. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt empty. Thousands of people were losing their jobs. Families were losing their homes. Retirement accounts were evaporating. The economic collapse I'd predicted was destroying lives across the country. Being right had never felt so wrong. The call came on a Friday afternoon. Jennifer answered the phone. "It's someone from Meridian," she said. "Richard Caldwell?" I stared at the phone like it might explode. Richard calling me was like the sun calling the moon, unprecedented and probably catastrophic. "Marcus." His voice sounded different, smaller. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Can you come in?" The drive to Meridian felt surreal. 6 months ago, I'd been escorted out by security. Now I was driving back voluntarily. The parking lot was half empty. Layoffs had started immediately after the crash. Support staff first, then middle management. The cuts were getting deeper every week. Richard's office looked the same. Same mahogany desk, same expensive furniture, same view of the city skyline. Richard looked terrible. His face was gaunt. His expensive suit hung loose on his frame. The man who'd fired me with such confidence was barely recognizable. I made a mistake, he said without preamble. Those 4 words hung in the air between us like smoke from a crashed plane. I should have listened to your analysis, should have prepared for the downturn, should have trusted your expertise. I waited. There had to be more. The board is asking questions. Shareholders are filing lawsuits. The expansion we announced has bankrupted us. There it was, the real reason for the call. What do you want from me, Richard? I want you to come back. Chief Strategy Officer. Full autonomy. Whatever salary you want. Chief Strategy Officer. The position I'd wanted for 5 years. The promotion Richard had always dangled just out of reach. You fired me for being right. I fired you for being inconvenient. I know the difference now. Richard pulled out a folder. Inside was a contract with numbers that made my eyes water. Salary, benefits, stock options, golden parachute. Everything I'd ever wanted from Meridian. The company is dying, Marcus. We need someone who can see around corners, someone who can predict what's coming next. What's coming next is bankruptcy. Your expansion debt is unsustainable. Your market position is compromised. Your reputation is destroyed. Richard's face went pale. Can it be fixed? I looked around his office, at the awards on his walls, at the photos from better times, at the view of a city struggling through economic collapse. Maybe, but not by me. Marcus, please, I'm begging you. Begging. Richard Caldwell was begging me. The man who'd called me paranoid was begging the paranoid pessimist to save his company. I have other commitments now. I'll double whatever they're paying you. It's not about money. Then what? I stood up slowly, the same way I'd stood up 6 months ago when security had come to escort me out. It's about respect. It's about listening to expertise instead of dismissing it. It's about making decisions based on data instead of ego. Richard's shoulders sagged. I understand. No, you don't. If you understood, you never would have fired me in the first place. I walked toward the door, the same door I'd walked through 6 months ago as a disgraced employee. Marcus, wait. I turned back. What should I tell the board? Tell them the truth. Tell them you ignored the warning signs. Tell them you chose optimism over reality. Tell them you fired the one person who could have saved them. That'll destroy me. You destroyed yourself. I just documented it. The elevator ride down felt different this time. Lighter. Like a weight I'd carried for months was finally lifting. In the lobby, I passed the security guard who'd escorted me out. He recognized me immediately. Mr. Holloway, you coming back? Just visiting. Good for you, sir. This place hasn't been the same since you left. Outside, the October air was crisp and clean. The city was struggling, but it would recover. Markets always did. Economies always rebounded. But trust, once broken, was harder to repair. My phone buzzed with a text from David Martinez. New client wants to meet Monday. Fortune 500 company. They heard about your Meridian prediction. Interested? I typed back quickly. Very interested. 6 months ago, I'd been fired for seeing the future. Now companies were paying premium rates for that same vision. The irony wasn't lost on me. I drove home through streets lined with for sale signs and closed businesses. The economic collapse had touched everyone. But some had been prepared. Some had listened to the warnings. Some had trusted the data over the optimism. Jennifer was waiting when I got home. She could read my face immediately. You turned him down. I turned him down. Good. You're worth more than Richard Caldwell ever deserved. That night, we had dinner on our back patio, the same patio where I'd sat 6 months ago, wondering how we'd pay the mortgage. Now we were discussing vacation plans and college funds. The future looked bright for the first time in months. My phone rang during dessert, unknown number. Marcus Holloway? Speaking. This is Rebecca Stone from Stone Industries. I heard about your situation with Meridian. Your analysis, your predictions. Another client. Another company that wanted to hire the man who'd seen the crash coming. I'm interested in discussing a consulting arrangement, she continued. I'll have my partner contact you Monday morning, I said. We're booking into next year, but we might be able to fit you in. After I hung up, Jennifer smiled. Getting popular. Getting vindicated. 3 years later, Martinez Holloway Consulting had offices in 12 cities. Our client list read like a Fortune 500 directory. Our success rate was legendary. We were the firm that had predicted the Great Recession, the consultants who'd saved billions in corporate losses, the analysts who saw around corners. I kept a newspaper clipping on my office wall. The headline read, Meridian Industries files for bankruptcy. Richard Caldwell had lasted 18 months after our meeting. The board finally forced him out when the expansion debt became unsustainable. The company that had employed me for 23 years was sold for parts. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt sad. All those jobs lost, all those families affected, all that destruction that could have been prevented. If someone had just listened to the data. My daughter graduated college that spring. Economics degree. Magna cum laude. She'd written her senior thesis on predictive market analysis. I want to work with you, Dad. The consulting business isn't easy. Long hours, difficult clients, people don't like hearing bad news. Good thing I learned from the best. She joined the firm that summer. Fresh eyes, new perspectives, the same analytical mind that had gotten me fired and made me successful. On her first day, I gave her a piece of advice. Always trust the data, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. What if people don't want to hear it? Then you find people who do. 5 years after Richard Caldwell fired me for being right, I was testifying before Congress about economic forecasting and crisis preparation. The same analysis that had cost me my job was now shaping national policy. The same paranoid pessimism was now called visionary leadership. After my testimony, a young reporter approached me. Mr. Holloway, what would you say to executives who ignore expert analysis? I thought about Richard, about Meridian, about all the warnings that had gone unheeded. I'd say the market doesn't care about your optimism. It doesn't care about your politics or your ego or your quarterly projections. The market cares about reality, and reality always wins. Any regrets about your time at Meridian? Just one. I wish I'd been wrong. That evening, I sat in my home office reviewing the latest economic indicators, new data, new trends, new warning signs that most people would ignore. But not everyone would ignore them. Some would listen, some would prepare, some would trust expertise over optimism. My phone rang. Another potential client. Another company that wanted to hire the man who'd seen the last crash coming. Marcus Holloway speaking. Mr. Holloway, this is Thomas Chen from Pacific Dynamics. We need to talk about your latest market analysis. When can you start? I smiled and opened my calendar. The future was always uncertain, but some patterns never changed. People would always choose comfortable lies over inconvenient truths until the truth became unavoidable. And when that happened, they'd call the paranoid pessimist who'd tried to warn them. They'd call the man they'd fired for being right. They'd call me